Everyone, I'm Jay Kapadia, a recent graduate from SCET, Surat. My thesis aims to suggest a participatory housing approach for conservation induced displacement, case of Siddi community of Karnataka. Human-wildlife interdependency is a key to the existence of human life. Once in a fragmented wildlife habitat, one of the elephant asks the villager, "What are you doing on our land?" To its response, one of the villager asks the same question back, "What are you doing on our land?" Then the lion responds as, "I just updated my Google map recently. It used to be forest here." The question of who actually owns the land leads to human-wildlife conflict depending on three dimensions: pressure and level of exposure, and potential interaction to become conflict. Habitat fragmentation creates a conflict edge which disturbs the coexistence. Although India is rich in biodiversity, each day a human death is witnessed due to conflict. Forest tribal communities and wildlife are under a threat as today they compete for limited resources. The restrictions to forest led to settlement and agricultural land expansion, deforestation, which are the major reasons for the conflict. Side are the biological scientists concerned about biodiversity loss, while on the other side are the social scientists concerned with livelihood issues of communities. Such perspectives are often found in high conflict zones like Karnataka, one of the biodiversity hotspots. Kali Tiger Reserve is reported as endangered by Worldwide Fund for Nature. By mapping wildlife corridors, vulnerable settlements prone to such conflicts are identified. Four major communities are vulnerable to conflict, and Siddi is selected as a case, who are an ethnic community who arrived from East Africa. From merchants to slaves, they are left behind as legacy of colonization after abolition of slave trade. So does India remember its only African tribe? They remain forgotten in history. Siddi settlements are majorly found in Halyal and Yalapur areas with a linear and scattered pattern. They have a close association with forest and perform the traditional African dance Damal. The major economy is agriculture and bamboo work. Few vulnerable settlements are identified, and by comparative analysis, Kardoli is selected for study. It was identified that more than 70% of the settlement is under encroachment as per Revenue and Forest Department. I observed that the settlement has its own character of pedestrian trails, religious motifs, and surrounding landscape. Mapping of household size, income, and open spaces helped me to identify various patterns and housing typologies which exist. Major typologies are studied to understand their perception of house. The houses are linear in nature with transition corridors in between separating different spaces. The houses lack natural lighting and ventilation also. Mud is primary material for walls and flooring, while tiles are used for roofing. The traditional and contemporary construction method was analyzed to understand the local craftsmanship and available resources. Various issues observed like mud bricks were resistant against rain and need to look for alternative materials. Interviewing people led me to understand their perception and problems which they face today, from racial discrimination to conflicts. The issues based on various capitals indicate that the community is exposed to severe losses and damages as it competes with wildlife for limited resources. A holistic sustainable development is a need to make a win-win situation for both human and wildlife. Every case of human-wildlife conflict is unique. Understanding human-wildlife interaction theory, depletion of wildlife is not an appropriate solution. In the contradictory perspectives of coexistence versus separation, I think both aspects are to be considered at different levels. That is to balance coexistence at a regional level with separation at local level for integrated conservation development project. Question of why such projects often fail to create coexistence between different entities. On research, major issues which were identified were lack of collaborative practice, community exclusion in the process, and lack of strategies. And most importantly, the architect is not involved. I tried to understand the gap and identified that it is a complex web of many processes which caters to so many agencies that help these entities. And I observed that an architect can play an important role at various stages like site planning, site selection, house design, support services, etc. by extensive research and collaborative mapping with these agencies. First of all, we need to reverse the current top-down approach into a bottom-up approach where the community is the leader in the decision-making process rather than just a spectator. The approach for the project is divided into four factors: participatory approach, material and construction, site and services, and incremental approach. First, I had a workshop with a community with a local Siddi NGO to understand their perceptions and evolve various patterns for the design processes. Based on participation, 3 potential sites were identified, and after several analyses, Hosur is the most preferred site considering technical as well as socio-cultural aspects. Suitable settlement spot is identified by understanding several layers of topography, buffer zones, climate, existing farmlands, and watershed mapping, etc. And the most preferred location is the intermediate level between forest and agriculture land inspired from existing settlement patterns. The challenge is to prevent future encroachments, self-help construction technique, and existing house form adaptation with incremental nature. Understanding diversity in existing houses was the idea to have 6 parent typologies with internal variations to retain the diversity. Settlements are linked with a primary road and a lake to allow water retention for self-sustaining habitat. Gardoli is designed for the initial stage while separate land is allocated for Wada settlement and with additional reserved land for future expansion. As per analysis, the traditional settlement pattern of small clusters changed to linear formation by administrative boundaries. The idea was to evolve amalgamation of both patterns to cluster around a central court with a tree known as Kate. The settlement is distributed along the topography with biofencing as a buffer edge, inspired from vernacular settlements to avoid undesirable expansion and prevent future conflicts. The supportive amenities are decentralized to generate various activity nodes. The different clusters are linked through a communal spine to retain the existing settlement character. Morning in a Siddi settlement starts with people going to their fields for cultivation and taking cattle for grazing. The community visits a church to celebrate festivals or events like the birth of a child or death of a family member. In the afternoon, children reach back home and help in the domestic activities. In the evening, the community spine allows informal gatherings and creates a healthy environment. The cluster is designed based on typology mixing and connecting backyards of dwellings to allow social activities. A central court acts as a space to solve community disputes, perform traditional African dance or rituals, and also celebrate different festivals. The houses are placed respecting natural terrain to minimize land cutting and filling. The Siddi houses evolved in various geometries as a continuous process, adapting to changing times. The proposed core house design is based on designing Mojgar, which is a private area comprising 20% of space and rest allowing users to take control over it with necessary support services. Foundation is from locally available stone used in existing few houses, and mud bricks are replaced with CSEB blocks for better stability due to red soil available. For roof alternative to timber, bamboo is adopted to reduce dependence on forest. The core house is to be constructed under government subsidy and other services through different departments respectively. To allow flexibility variation, different plot size is adopted.
Most core house allows user to decide how much to build, when to build, and what to build for all 6 different typologies. In incrementation stages, the user decides the appearance of the house to establish his house identity, allowing diversity in future adaptations. User decides the functionality of each space and completes the full house over a period of time depending on his needs. Each neighborhood is different from one another and helps to identify their own house with infinite possibilities. With increase in size, an additional corridor is added to allow natural lighting and cross ventilation which is absent in existing dwellings. The perception of home by each one is not fixed and static, but instead it is fluid and multiple, which alters and changes with lifestyle and time. The flexibility to paint, rearrange spaces, and add elements like motifs and kitchen gardens defines the identity of the community. Such a process of design with simple understanding develops attachment to houses which retain cultural identities of the community. A house is a home when in its making it is not the machine but the hands of man which have worked upon it.
So still, I would say, I am in the process of understanding this complex web with infinite interdependencies among various entities and agencies, where the role of an architect can define the current practice of conservation projects. So it is a communal art which is not produced by few intellectuals but by spontaneous participation and experience of the whole under the common heritage to coexist in this ecosystem. Thank you.